Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing, favorite season. Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing, favorite season. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks in my sack or in my bag, yeah. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks in my sack or in my bag, yeah. Frozen, neck is frozen, catch me rolling.
So Lincoln Riley, formerly head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners football team, has found himself taking a job at the University of Southern California as their new head coach. Meanwhile, Notre Dame head coach Brian Kelly has left his team fighting for a playoff berth in the college football playoff and headed down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to take on the LSU job. And before we get into all that, this brought up the tie into the NFL is the fact that Kliff Kingsbury, right, this is a guy who coached in the Big 12 at Texas Tech, competed against Lincoln Riley, very good friends with Lincoln Riley. They run very similar offenses, know each other very well. Oklahoma's job is now available, and he has been linked to it. The last time I've seen a college coach linked to a job like this probably was Nick Saban with Alabama about a decade and a half ago, and we all saw how that turned out. Kliff Kingsbury faced a lot of comments from the media about this. You know, most coaches, they say no comment or not going to address that at all, just trying to win this weekend. He just completely ignored the questions outright, didn't really answer it one way or the other, raised a lot of eyebrows. Do you think Kingsbury is potentially going to take this Oklahoma job?
I think possibly because, like, where did he excel the most in his career at? Was at Oklahoma, I would say. Or no, he was at Texas Tech.
He was at Texas Tech.
Texas Tech,
Yeah, he didn't do great there. His claim to fame was probably coaching Patrick Mahomes, looking back on it.
And then the Oklahoma is like a big calling card school. You know, you're gonna do well there. You're gonna get the recruits there. You're gonna get a better Kyler Murray. You're gonna get your Baker Mayfields. You're gonna get anybody and everybody who comes through there, Sam Bradford, whoever it may be. But I think the big thing here is Kyler Murray slated to play this weekend, or is he still out? Or they have the bye this week?
Yeah, they've got the bye. So
I imagine he comes back next week. Has to.
What do you think? You're just to try and convince Kingsbury to stay, or do you think
if he doesn't come back next week and this injury seemingly more serious than they've let on, I think it's 100% he's gonna probably take that job, because I think he was banking on having a big season with Kyler this year, and I think this season has slowed down. And if he gets a better offer, he's probably gonna take it, because if they end up playing much worse, I don't think he gets another opportunity this big.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just got corrected there by Derek. It's not Arizona's bye. It's actually playing this week. So thanks.
So last week was the bye, so he has to play this week.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thanks for the feedback. We appreciate all the commenters watching us live. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe as always. Yeah, look, I think Kingsbury, he's a guy that's all about him, right? He wants to be seen as this offensive genius and guru, and wants to be well known in football circles. And even though Arizona's doing well, no one's really talking about him, right? I mean, it's been kind of a quiet year for Arizona. Most of the talk has been about Murray's injury. And I wonder if going to Oklahoma and going to the SEC is tempting for him. I wonder if he thinks this is his chance to maybe step out and be noticed more. Because I think as weird as it sounds, he'd probably get more notoriety going to Oklahoma and competing against Nick Saban and competing against now Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin than he does in Arizona. And I'll throw one other tidbit in here that I think is interesting. Right, the closest conference to the NFL in terms of competitiveness week in and week out is obviously the SEC. It's essentially, almost NFL rosters week in and week out. So Kingsbury already knows that's what he's going up against right now with Arizona, right? The NFL team, they play NFL schedules, they face NFL rosters. He doesn't see it as much of a jump negatively to go to college and have to compete in the SEC. A lot of coaches don't want to go to the SEC because of that, right? That's one of the reasons why a lot of people think Lincoln Riley left. He didn't want to compete against the SEC talent week in and week out at Oklahoma. So I wonder if that's influencing Kingsbury's thinking. It's like, hey, I'm already used to these tough schedules and these battles week in and week out. Why don't I go and just keep playing that, and I get a chance to get noticed more, get on TV more. And frankly, he'd probably make more money at Oklahoma and have a less stressful lifestyle than he does at Arizona.
What do you think coaches think? All right, so he's dipped his foot in the NFL water. I'd say he was mildly successful. He hasn't won anything or done anything crazy, but he's done okay. He's executed his game plan at Arizona. It's been successful, whether he had great players or if it was his scheme. But now that he's done that, do you think that the NFL is the end-all be-all of football coaching? Or if you get on a good college team, is that good enough? If you can make good money and win in college ball, is that the best job?
So I think it depends on personality. You look at a guy like Steve Spurrier, right? He's a guy who liked being more of a celebrity. He liked his off seasons, big golfer, things like that. So if you're like just a general football junkie and you love it kind of stuff, the day-to-day 365, 24/7 job, kind of like a Bill Belichick kind of guy, then that's sort of what you love. And you kind of love that because you have no off days. You don't have to worry about recruiting. But college is a little bit more relaxed. You get a little bit more of the festive atmosphere. It's a college campus and things like that. I think Kingsbury, right? He's a young guy, and I think he likes being a young guy. And the NFL is kind of a grinders league. It's sort of like when you're a head coach, you're almost like a corporate CEO a little bit, right? You're kind of up in an office all day. You're first one in, last one out all the time. It's a lot of press conferences, a lot of media commitments. It's very, very corporate, very tough. Whereas college is a little bit more of a festive environment. I mean, and let's be honest, Lane Kiffin found a lot of that in Ole Miss and Florida Atlantic before that too. A lot of coaches like that. Already talked about Steve Spurrier. I mean, I think that's kind of drawing him potentially a little bit. And frankly, I think Kingsbury is probably frustrated with the fact that, the NFL is tough because you lose so much. You can be really, really good and still lose 4 or 5 games a year. If he goes to Oklahoma, you lose twice a year, and that's a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
So it's almost going to Oklahoma allows him the ability to kind of enjoy, win more, don't have to worry so much about the week in and week out. Like Oklahoma, obviously you don't want to get upset against a team like Kansas, but that's almost a bye week, right? You play D1 AA teams, that's almost a bye week, except for South Carolina against the Citadel a number of years ago, but we'll not talk about that too much. But yeah, so it's almost a bye week. You don't get that in the NFL. Right. Even the worst team can beat anybody week in and week out. Like the Ravens needed that miracle kick by Tucker just to beat Detroit. Right. That's not uncommon. In college football, Kingsbury doesn't have to worry about those tough week in and week out matchups all year long. He goes to Oklahoma. He's guaranteed 9-10 wins a year. Even in the SEC, I think they're going to be a top contender. I think he's really considering it.
Yep. But the main thing we have here is, no matter what he does, he's got to have a little bit more class than Brian Kelly had leaving Notre Dame. Let's take a look at this. I'll read this. Brian Kelly has reportedly been linked to, is it the new LSU job? Mm-hmm. And I guess for some reason he told his publicist that, okay, you can go ahead and confirm that I've accepted the job before speaking to any of his players. And in doing so, he's thought it was acceptable to send them a text while he's on his way back to come tell them what's going on. I'll read the text for you very briefly. It says, "Man, let me first apologize for the late night text, and most importantly for not being able to share the news with you in person that I'll be leaving Notre Dame. I'm flying back to South Bend tonight to be able to meet you in the morning, but the news broke late today. I'm sorry you found out through social media or news reports. I'll have more to share when we meet tomorrow at 7 a.m. First of all, meeting at 7 a.m., isn't that kind of punishment? You can do it a little bit later. But for now, just know that my love for you is limitless. I'm so proud of all of you and all that you've accomplished. Our program's elite because of your hard work and commitment, and I know that you will continue. I will share more in the morning when we meet again. Again, my sincerest apologize for not being the one to share the news directly with you, Coach Kelly."
Yeah, so this is very, very low class. So first thing I want to hit on, 7 a.m. for coaches, especially in college, they think that's probably 3 hours late for players. Coaches will schedule the crap out of things at 5:30 in the morning. They do it all the time. It's extremely annoying. It's just what they do. But this is very, very low class for Kelly. I mean, so the one thing I'll compare it against is my senior year. After my junior year, our head coach at the time, he was rumored to be leaving. He'd been linked to being a coordinator at some other schools in the past, and he was rumored to be potentially leaving again. And, obviously the rumors are flying around, and you get called to a team meeting. You kind of know what's going to happen, but, you go to it, and, our coach told us, hey, I took a job at Wake Forest. I appreciate everything you're doing. You guys were great. You guys mean the world to me, and took the time after the meeting to shake people's hands and say goodbye and stuff. And that guy, our coach was Kevin Higgins, by the way, really nice guy, at least in terms of being classy and upfront with that kind of thing. And that's, I think, the right way to do it, right? Because the thing with players, and it's kind of changing now, but players aren't paid. They're not compensated. They go to a school to play for a coach or a scheme or a system. So a lot of players, let's say you were a redshirt freshman and then you got a little bit of playing time as a sophomore, but you're kind of waiting. You're biding your time because you fit into this coach's scheme and system. And now he's going to up and leave. So now you got a decision to make. Now, do you up and leave and uproot your entire life, 2 years of work, or do you try and stick it out with the new regime? And there's a lot of guys who are going to be slated to be big time players, maybe get a lot of looks, maybe even make it to the next level, who suddenly have their careers just totally flipped because the coach and the scheme they were recruited for, is now gone.
Oh yeah, I can see that. And like you said, maybe you like Texas Tech, like air raid style of offense, like maybe that's your thing. Or like a guy I think of as like Case Keenum. Case Keenum probably wouldn't have excelled at other colleges like Alabama the way that he did, in that air raid style of offense that he played. And like you said, the coach leaves. Like if that coach was to leave overnight, he'd be screwed. Like there's no, like, what are you gonna do?
Well, you have to either transfer, you have to stick it out, and that's tough, right? So there's a lot of people that just, like, not that I was anywhere close to a good player, but there's a lot of people that, you have that competitiveness. Well, heck, I'm going to stick it out and make the best of the situation. I've committed so much time to the school and to this program. I don't want to leave. And that hurts their playing time, obviously, potentially. And it hurts their any draft prospects they might have had. Or you up and leave and you have to transfer, in which case you're flipping your entire life upside down. You're moving to a new school, new state, new city, all of that. And you're competing again with a new coach that you really don't know that well. And you have to go through that process anyway. So it's just really tough on players. Coaches leaving is really, really bad for players. And this is one of the downsides with college football not paying players, is that the head coach specifically, and really all the coaches, to them, this is a business. And a lot of jobs are stepping stones to maybe even bigger jobs. But the problem is a player, if the quarterback for, let's say Notre Dame, Jack Cohn, let's say he can't sit there today and say, you know what, I'm going to transfer to Alabama because Alabama's calling me because I had a good game, or somewhere else. Like, that's not the process they can really go through. They can try, but that's not how they're geared because they're not pros, right? That's not how they think. They're recruited to go to that school. They want to be there. They choose to go there. But the coaches treat it differently. The coaches are treating it like a business and a career. And that's why a lot of players, this is really bad for them. A lot of players are going to be upset, and deservedly so, because this is 100% against all the players who went to go play for Kelly and Notre Dame. I mean, what do you do now if you're a guy who really liked the scheme he ran or the program he did and you were committed long-term? I mean, you stick it out at Notre Dame or you go somewhere else. And there's one other point I want to bring up too, is that there are a lot of coaches, not all of them, but a lot, and a lot of coaching staffs that will put a lot of pressure on players to sacrifice grades and potential majors and minors and things like that. So imagine at some of these schools, especially at big time programs, where a coach told you, hey, I don't want you to get this degree, or they do a lot of meetings. It's a lot of, you hurt your GPA because you got a lot of activities going on. And then the coach up and leaves 2 years later and you're stuck there and you're like, well, heck, I listened to you, but now my career opportunities are going to get hurt if I was an NFL guy. And if I'm not an NFL guy, my GPA is lower, or I have a lesser degree. It's really a bad situation. It's really unfavorable to the players when any time a coach leaves, and especially like this.
Yeah, I think it's not a good situation for anybody, and it could be handled a lot better.
I got racks in my sack, hurt my back, yeah. They said, Saint Nick, but you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks.